coming out tonight.
Happy to be here, thank you.
Appreciate it. And you met everybody going around the table. Just kind of some basic ground rules. Kind of the way we set up our interviews is allowing the candidates to do an opening, their opening remarks up to 5 minutes.
I won't need that long.
Okay, that's fine, take what you need. And then over the next, say, 45 minutes, we'll go around the table, ask questions, and you have up to 2 minutes to reply. And if there's some time left in that, and it's a related question to that, somebody else may jump in and ask that. The timer will be down here that Pat's keeping, similar to what you saw last night,
Yeah.
if you saw it.
I did, yeah, it was great.
It was, I think the second one was better than the first one.
Yeah.
the
No.
cell
Poor
phone.
Ryan holding the
Yeah,
cell
yeah.
phone, like, how can they see that? And I actually sent her a text and James a text.
And I had my phone turned off because I said, I'm not letting my phone ring in here. Oh, was yours on?
And then we'll give you up to 5 minutes closing. So with that, if you want to tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
My name is Will Metcalf, and running for state rep, District 16, sixth-generation resident in Montgomery County. Born and raised in Conroe. I went to Sam Houston State University, criminal justice major. Always stayed at home. I commuted back and forth every day. Married my wife, who's also from Conroe. We had twin daughters that are 2 years old, and we just celebrated their second birthday in November. So one goes that direction, the other goes this direction. They're a joy to be around. We don't need TV in our house, even though we have it. They're our entertainment. But work at Spirit of Texas Bank in commercial lending. I'm a personal investor. I have several businesses of my own. Part of being a member of Spirit of Texas Bank, I'm a commercial lender, mainly do real estate lending. At the Conroe branch, which is off Highway 105 by Wedgewood Golf Course, if y'all are familiar with that area. And serve on a number of local boards and organizations. I'm a member of the Conroe Industrial Development Corporation. I'm also finance chairman of that board. Member of the Greater Conroe Economic Development Council, which is appointed by the Conroe Industrial Development Corporation, and which I'm appointed by the mayor and city council of Conroe. A member of the Montgomery County Fair Association, I'm a lifetime member of that. Serve on their board of directors. I was vice chairman of their livestock auction committee, and you can't run for office and be chairman of it, or I would be chairman of it this year, but now I'm just a committee person on that committee. Very proud of that. I was vice president of the Friends of Conroe for a couple of years. Served on the board of directors after that. Yeah, just very active in our community. Kind of how this process got started, Will, why are you here today, is back in May, our current state representative, Brandon Creighton, kind of let it out that he was going to be seeking another office. He didn't make it public, but, you know, some people knew about it. And at that time, I started getting some phone calls. Will, it's your time to step up to the plate for your community to seek this position. And, you know, I said, let's wait and see, and if and when that time comes that Brandon makes that decision, we will talk. And so he did in August, and right after he announced, I started getting phone calls about, Will, Brandon's stepping aside, seeking a different office. Will you please run for this position? And I said, well, okay, well, let's talk about it. And more weeks went by, the more phone calls I got, and started people coming by my office, visiting with me about it. My wife kind of heard some rumbles, and family members did, and close friends. And finally, one night, we were putting our daughters for bed upstairs. And my wife says, sit down, Will, we need to talk. And we were walking down the steps. So when your wife does that, you listen, as always. So we find ourselves in the living room, on the couch, talking, and she said, you know, Will, I'm out in the community hearing people talking about you running for office. this, and, you know, your community is calling you right now. And I just want you to know, here's your green light if this is something that we need to do for our community. So that night we prayed about it, which we had already been doing, but that was the night that we made our decision to run, and called our family and some close friends and told them about it. They loved the idea, which we'd already been discussing. And I called my president and CEO of my bank that night. It was late at night, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10. And they had heard rumblings too about it. They said, we'll do whatever you need to do to win this. We support you 100%. And I tell you, it's been great ever since. We had a kickoff event October 14th at the Lone Star Convention Center by the airport. We had over 700 in attendance. And I tell you, the amount of support that we have is just tremendous. And I look forward to bringing a new generation of conservative leadership to our state capitol. I guess I did need that 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think pretty good.
We got 12 seconds left.
Right on.
What we'll do is
Done.
go around counterclockwise, and I'll kick it off and give you a minute to think.
Can you skip?
Counter
You skip him, because he's already over his limit.
You know anything about credit card debt?
It's a story.
Okay, so you're running for HD 16.
Yes.
Why this position and not, say, commissioner? That's a big jump, House District Representative.
Yeah.
Why not something, you know, more local, like a commissioner's type of position?
Yeah, like I said, the phone call came. And when your community calls you and they tell you, well, we need you in this position, you know, you take opportunities like that.
Who is the phone call?
Several members in our community, key leaders.
So were they Tea Party people or were they established?
You know, I don't know if they're members of Tea Party or not. I'm
You mean
sorry.
you didn't ask him for the Tea Party parade?
I did not.
Okay,
Yeah.
James?
Let's see, I think, I'm gonna ask about taxation. Right now, of course, and this came up last night in the forum as well, about the fact that the property tax in our state makes a lot of people feel like they don't really own their property, because it can always be taken away if for some reason they
lien
don't
gets
pay their
placed on
property
it.
taxes, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, do you think we should continue with property tax? If so, is that where we would go to get additional revenue when needed? If not, how do we replace it?
Yeah, you know, something I've been studying, but the states that I've looked at that do not have property taxes,
Mhm.
they have an income tax.
So is that what we need?
No, I'm not in favor of the state income tax
Okay.
at all.
What about an expanded sales tax?
That could be dangerous. You know, it could go as high as whatever they wanted to do, but it,
Well, that's true now, right? I mean, they can
Yeah.
raise it
yeah.
anything they want.
But, you know, I'm a personal property owner, I'm a private property rights person.
So you like your property taxes where they're at?
Well, I don't like them, but, you know, it's just something we gotta do. It's part of being a landowner,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you wouldn't replace it with a consumption tax or divert it to some other fees, separation taxes from oil and gas, or
You
some
know-
other source of revenue?
Yeah, I have to see the numbers before I committed myself to that answer, because I just don't know how that all would shake out.
Or what about the franchise tax?
Mhm. I don't own a franchise, so,
Well, we're not asking what affects you personally, but as a legislature, because it affects me personally,
what
You own
franchise?
businesses, right?
is,
Yeah,
That's what the franchise tax is.
yeah, exactly.
well, but I don't have a Burger King, things like that.
Well, that's not what the franchise
Yeah.
does, but that's.
Well, that's true, and I don't know about your particular bank, but basically anything that, any industry that has revenues, not income, but revenues over $1 million pays a franchise tax.
Mhm.
Is that something we want to continue or scale back? Because Governor Perry was talking about eliminating it. Some others have too.
Yeah.
Do you think, in which case the revenue has to be made up someplace else? Lo and behold, property tax is sitting there, or additional sales tax. Do you think we should keep it, modify it, or what?
I think it's something to look at, but I don't know what the right answer is.
Okay.
I know that's not your answer you wanna hear.
Well, it's your answer
But-
that we're looking for, not.
Yeah. I know,
What I-
but to give you my honest answer, I don't have answer for you on that because I haven't had time to research that
Sure.
particular subject.
That's fair.
Okay.
I'm gonna start out with something that doesn't relate to my question, but just something for you to think about since you're in research mode. If my property tax is $5,000 this year, and I don't do anything, I just sit in my easy chair, and I don't go anywhere, I don't do anything, it'll be $5,000 next year. But if it's a state income tax, and believe me, I'm not in favor of state income tax, but I just sit in my easy chair, I don't pay anything, because I haven't gained anything, nothing's changed. I haven't increased my income, I have no income, so I don't have to pay a tax. Which one do you think's fairer? Not in favor of state income tax, I'm just saying, property tax, as far as I'm concerned, is the least fair tax on the books, other than perhaps the death tax.
Yeah, that tax terrible.
But property tax, I don't have to do anything, I still have to pay it. Earn zero income, I still have to pay it. Okay, my question. Special purpose districts, I know you said you weren't sure exactly what we were trying to
Yeah,
ask on
yeah.
that question, but I'm sure you're familiar with special purpose districts in general.
Yeah, I've never heard of them before.
Well, a MUD is a special purpose
Okay.
district.
Alright.
Road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2,300 of them.
ISDs, you know, you name it,
Yeah,
there
okay.
are all kinds of special purpose
I'm
districts.
more familiar with a RUD or MUD,
Okay.
yeah.
But there are a number of, they seem to be almost ungoverned in a sense. And so if you're familiar with, maybe you could give us a couple examples of what you feel are the worst case examples of special purpose districts, how, you know, abuses that you might be familiar with. Of course, if you're not really familiar with them, that may be difficult.
Yeah.
But let me state that in my opinion, they are not accountable to a point where abuses are abundant. And if you go to the legislature, that's one of the areas I would really like to see you tackle. Of course, you have to come up
Because
to speed on it.
there's some abuse to it, is what you're saying?
I think there are many abuses in
Was
special
how they
purpose
spend the
districts.
money, what they spend the money on,
On bonds?
No accountability.
no accountability. And there's a road in the Woodlands that has exactly, what, 3 registered voters in it, because they, what do you call it, not seceded, they,
Gerrymander.
well, they excised the residences, so there'd be no voters, basically.
Yeah,
Perfectly legal.
yeah,
Okay, well, if you're
yeah.
not
I mean,
that
I know
familiar, then
about
you,
RUDs and MUDs, but the politics behind it, what you're speaking about,
they just need to be made more accountable. And so, from the legislature, that would be something that would be a worthwhile venture.
good.
Is there a question yet?
Okay.
I'm sorry?
It's okay, no,
Well, I
it
think
didn't stop because there wasn't a question yet.
Yes.
We probably need more discussion about that, but let me ask you about something that kind of confused me a little bit here, also in light of the fact that you said you're a private property guy. You said that you would oppose limiting the power of eminent domain to public works projects. And you know, one of the highest priority cases of that was, went to the Supreme Court a few years ago, Kelo versus Connecticut, where they condemned neighborhoods and threw people out so they could put in a shopping center that would generate.
We've had that here in Texas too.
Yeah, a lot of places. For the purpose of increasing tax revenue.
Right.
What is not what the Constitution says eminent domain is
Not for roads.
Not a roads, not a school. So
Yeah.
you said you would oppose restricting that, but is that really
Or is that what you meant?
I'm sorry?
Or is that what you meant?
You said you would oppose limiting the power of eminent domain.
Would oppose
Question 14.
limiting the power of eminent domain to public purposes.
So I guess there was a misunderstanding.
That's
probably.
fine. You can-
Yeah,
That's fine, that's one of the purposes of
because
the
basically
meeting.
you're saying limit the power.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
well, we're
Try to find out
asking
what
if
you
you,
Yeah.
what
Yes.
position you're on. If we wanted to limit the power of eminent domain, what position would you take to that? You're saying that you would oppose
Yeah.
that.
There's some, I mean, to build a shopping center, you
Well,
know,
part of it is, does building a shopping center which generates $10 million in tax revenue a move for the
Justify.
public good?
yeah.
yeah, it's a tough call. I see both sides of it. You know, you get rundown areas that need revitalization that can benefit the city or county better, in my opinion.
So you
Well, if
think
it's
you
not
should-
run down though, it's just would generate more tax revenue if it weren't residences,
Mhm.
but was a commercial district.
Which is what happened in these.
Right.
Yeah, and even if it's run down, is it the government's job to say, I'm gonna kick you guys out
That's
because
true.
you're not paying enough tax?
Property rights.
Right, yeah.
In fact of the matter, we could discuss that more in property tax, because the property tax code says that if you let your property just
Go to waste.
go to something, that you get a tax break.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
if
it's
you
true.
keep your neighborhood up, then
Put a
we
few
charge you
goats
more
on it.
taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the current property
Yeah.
tax code says. So, like, you can think about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's a tough call, but.
It's not too tough for some of us, you know?
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, no, I understand. You know, I've seen places where they have been run down and the city or whatever governmental entity it is, you know, does the eminent domain, and you've got beautiful areas and more tax revenue and the neighbors are happy about it.
That's not what the Constitution says, really.
Okay.
Life, liberty, and property.
Well, you mean state constitution, right? Or for US?
Well, the rules that govern, and including the U.S., that
Right.
govern eminent domains stay for, you know, public
General welfare.
benefit
public
and
good.
use,
Yeah,
not for generation of property tax revenue.
correct.
So in question number one, one of your three areas, priorities, would be job creation. So my question is kind of a two-part question. You said as our state grows and our area grows, we need to be sure to keep up an environment of business development. Would you, and this is related, would you agree or disagree with the statement that government is the least efficient entity to do anything?
Yeah, they're not very good at it.
Are they the least, which is gonna be better time in and time out? And some areas may be private sector and some areas may be the government sector.
Is this about economic development?
Yes.
Yeah, well, me serving on the Conroe Industrial Development Corporation and the Greater Conroe Economic Development Corporation, that's what we do. And I'm very familiar with it, and I spoke on it a little bit last night. We have an industrial park in Conroe. We also have a new technology park that we have as well. And we have an economic development director that travels all over the world to bring businesses in. And I tell you, it's working. And
Is that an arm of the city or is that a private entity?
How's that fun? In other words?
yeah, it's funded through tax abatements, through city and county. We work
Okay.
together.
Okay.
With the Texas One program with the governor's office, we travel the world to bring in additional industries. The technology park, we just built that out. I believe it's about I think we just opened it in March of this year, if I remember correctly. And probably about to sign on a big technology firm. Us board members don't know the name of it, know kind of the details of it. But
So
we don't know if they're
back
coming
to
or
my
not.
question of efficiency in the sectors.
It works. The tax abatements work.
You can restate your question.
Okay, so the question is government, can it be an efficient entity to do something?
To bring jobs here.
Is the private sector by definition going to be more efficient than the government sector or vice versa, or does it depend on the area?
Yeah, I think private's always better than public.
Okay, and so then what can government create that it doesn't take away? If it creates a job over here, isn't it taking away a job over here?
How's that?
Well, so if they employ people to build a road, now you just took, 400 plumbers out of this sector and they can't be plumbers, or they can't be house builders, or they can't be something else.
I'm sorry, but I don't see how a road worker and a plumber, you get
Well,
one.
yeah, maybe a private company that does road construction. So if you're giving it to, if there's, say, well, I don't know if the county would do
The corporation is gonna recruit people and some of them will be plumbers, some of them will be all walks of life. If you've got a contract, you know, it's not like there's people that are sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah, I really don't think I'm following you there.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You mentioned, I don't know, I think yes, maybe, I can't remember that. Got me confused. The question, I think, was asked, who funds the industrial development?
Yeah, we sell bonds on our end, County Industrial Development Corporation, we sell bonds. You know, city council had to pass it, we had to pass it as a board, but how we get those companies here to our region is we go out and recruit them. And we work with the Texas One program with the governor's office, like I said. We give abatements to people over a 7-year period, but they have to prove that they're being successful.
The person that you said travels the
Yeah.
world, bring in people to look.
Under Texas One,
Well, it's our program, but we're under a Texas One program with the governor's office.
funding, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But we fund it, our board does, but we're a member of the Texas One program.
Okay.
So the guy that flies around, who pays his salary?
The Conroe Industrial Development Corporation, which is 4B sales tax dollars.
And
So it's a government entity that sells
who guarantees?
bonds, and it's a
Well, it's
Private
public
corporation by the
funds, yeah.
government.
Yeah, who guarantees the bonds?
The city does.
city of.
Okay, so if there's a default by that company, then the city has to pick up the tab. So that's, they assume
Well,
the
the-
risk. Is that-
Yes, but they're really, we sell bonds for our infrastructure needs, not for our incentives. We have the cash for our incentives.
Okay. And where's the cash come from?
4B sales tax dollars.
And what is 4B?
4B is the.
Y'all need to speak up.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
4B sales tax, what can you define that?
Sales tax dollars within the city limits of Conroe.
Okay. All right. You ready? Did you support the pipeline from Lake Conroe to the Woodlands? The 36-inch?
Talking about the SJRA?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not in favor of that.
Because Conroe was part of that deal too as well, right?
Well,
Mayor?
Not that I'm aware of. I hadn't heard that. I can't speculate on it, but I was not a voting person on any of that. That's JRA's.
Right.
They have nothing to do with that.
Okay, I was just curious from a personal standpoint, supporting that. Back to, okay, so on this Johnson, back to abatements and the Johnson Development Program, did you support that initiative? And do you think that was a good investment on abatements from Conroe? I believe it was $20 million, and the
County, $20 million.
Talking about Camp Strike
Yeah.
on that deal? Well, again, I didn't have any say-so in that. I'm not on city council, so I have no say-so. But from what I understand is, it's a pay-as-you-go system. You know, they have to prove themselves to get the money. But like I said, I hadn't had anything to do with that.
Jim?
Sure. Now, we know, of course, in Texas, currently, state law only recognizes marriage to be between a man and a woman, all right? Let's say, though, that a federal court, which has jurisdiction over at least part of Texas, makes a ruling that by, lo and behold, we're violating the Equal Protection Clause and same-sex marriages must be allowed. So my question is, as a legislator, what would you do to deal with that issue? And at the same time, even though someone wasn't married here, they ran up to Massachusetts and got married, they're same-sex, should our courts deal with the divorces? Basically, it's like two questions.
Yeah, First part, if I understood you correctly, basically saying the federal government,
Federal court,
okay, federal
Not
court
the-
says
the
Texas, you
government.
have to recognize it? Is that what you're saying?
federal court rules that our law violates the U.S. Constitution Equal Protection Act, Equal Protection Amendment,
That's-
14th Amendment.
That'd be terrible.
So what would you do as a state legislator, legislator to
Yeah,
deal with that?
yeah, I'm a firm
If anything.
believer in marriages between a man and a woman, just
Mhm.
as God intended to be. And me as a state legislature would do everything to fight that. I would hope that, you know, our Attorney General would, you know, come back at them and say, absolutely not, we will not accept that here in the state of Texas. I'm a firm believer in Texas needs to run Texas. And if it's the federal government or Supreme Court or whoever tells us what to do and how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
it's not good for Texas.
Well, would you support legislation that would prohibit any state or county or city employee, even despite any court, district court or federal court ruling, prohibit them from marrying anyone other than a man and a woman?
You're
Or would you say that would be not worth doing because of the federal supremacy or something like that?
No, I think anything we can to make sure that marriage between a man and a woman, the better off we are.
Despite what any federal court would have to say about
Yeah.
it? Okay.
So what can you do? You're a state legislator, what can you do?
Make sure that we don't accept that in our state.
So all you can do is make laws or vote them out, right? So that's all you can do is create laws. As a legislator, all you can do is create laws and influence people.
What do you think?
Well, I got lots of opinions, but I'm not running for office.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what else I could do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, like to answer at least parts of it. Some of them led to the question I'm going to ask for. Question number one, the top three priorities: transportation, water, and job creation. So, but my real I guess I got two questions about that. Your answers to that question number one. Transportation, you talk about the sales tax, vehicle sales tax, as a diversion, and ending that. And I fully support that. But that's certainly not the only diversion in the state budget. There are many diversions where funds were intended for this area, but this legislature has said, oh, we're going to scrape off this much for the general fund, or for here, or for there, for whatever. So is your intent to attack that one only, or diversions in general? So that's question number one. And then number two, you under C in your answer, you said job creation. And I really would like to know what you believe the state's role is in job creation, the state.
Okay. I like to do one at a time, so
Please do.
if I remember, I'm a firm believer in truth and taxation, and my first priority is to reassign that sales tax that you pay when you go buy a new vehicle. Reassign that right now because it's going into the general fund. Like I said, firm believer in truth and taxation. I want to reassign that to the transportation budget. I'm not saying it needs to be all in 1 year. You can amortize it out to 10 years or 8 years, however long you want to do it. So that was, I believe the question was, what are your top three priorities or something
Right.
like that. So yes, that's number one.
What about the gas tax going to
That's a
education?
dime. That's a
Let
dime.
him finish mine.
Oh, I thought he did. Yes, please finish that.
Okay, so truth and taxation, no matter what it is, but transportation, that's a big one. And it's a big one for our area. And so I think that answers your question, but yes, truth and taxation, if there's other areas, and there are, we will tackle them too.
Why do you say new vehicles?
Well,
And that tax is paid on every vehicle you buy.
well, I don't mean a brand new one, just when you go buy a new vehicle. I mean, it's new to you, so,
Any vehicle.
yeah.
Okay, then part B
I
was
guess
your
I
thing
should
about
rephrase it.
about
yeah.
job creation. What is the state's role?
Yeah, job creation, I'm a firm believer that this state's done a great job in creating jobs, and we are the greatest state in the United States because we've got jobs here, and I believe that we need to continue that. We're a shining example that every state should strive to be, and we will continue to be number one.
So what have we done to make it so?
First of all, no income tax. That's one. Low taxes, you know, we can always be lower, but those are just a couple ways. Income tax is terrible.
Okay.
You were gonna say something about the gasoline thing?
Yeah, the diversion from the gas tax to the paper education.
That's
Is
another
that
one
something
of
you
those
would change? I
diversions.
thought that's what you were, one of the
Well,
things you were talking
no,
about.
his answer specifically addressed the vehicle sales
Oh, I
tax.
see what you're saying, yeah.
And that, so I was asking him, does it extend to things like the gas tax, which is also one of the
We can come back
diversions?
around to that
Sure.
if you wanted to
Fine.
look at this.
You know, conservatives have a handful of high priority issues that they like to see addressed, nationwide and statewide. And we've had a strong Republican majority in the Texas Congress for a long time. It's not necessarily a conservative majority, it's a Republican, sort of halfway claiming to be conservative majority. But there are a number of major issues that it's almost inconceivable to believe have not gotten any attention. One of them is correcting the sanctuary city issue. And the other would be American law for American courts. Are you familiar with?
American law for what?
American law for American courts.
Okay.
You know, unbelievably, there are a number of cases in the United States that are ruled on foreign law, Sharia law, and even law in other cases. How can that happen? I don't know. But there have been moves to make a state law that says, you know, if you're a judge, you got to use American law.
Not foreign law.
And there's resistance to it for some reason. The other is sanctuary city laws. You know, Conroe's a sanctuary city that says we're ignoring laws about illegal immigrants, and yet they still continue to get state funds. And there have been moves to push a law that says, you know, you got to obey the law, Conroe, and the legislators won't really pass it. So will you support those laws? Will you write a bill? Will you co-sponsor a law that would address those two issues and maybe other conservative issues?
On the Sharia law, to that question first, you know, this is America, and, you know, we need to have Americans, whoever it may be, go under American law, not Sharia law or whatever it is.
We shouldn't have to write a new law to have it that way, but it's
Exactly.
not the reality of it.
It's terrible. It's terrible. So I'm a firm believer in that we need to, you know, this is America and this is our law. And so, but on the sanctuary city, I don't know enough about it. I haven't heard that Conroe's a sanctuary city. So,
Houston is too.
yeah.
Most
So-
of the population centers become sanctuary laws.
Most of the what?
Most of the big metropolitan areas, they end up with a high illegal immigration. And
Do
they
you know what
just
that,
don't wanna-
what that actually means in terms of,
Tell me what it means.
well, when a policeman or a deputy pulls you over, even though they pretty much are sure you're not a legal resident, they leave that issue alone. They're gonna treat you like you're a citizen. So in other words, they won't pick you up as being illegal to turn you over to the
They
feds.
won't call ICE.
Won't call ICE, check it out,
So
nothing.
therefore, the city becomes a sanctuary. for-
Right, in other words, the only way they'll get picked up is if ICE comes in, like ICE has as many people around as they would need to do.
Right, right.
You know, so every county has deputies, every city has police.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we live in Texas and, you know, when I'm in the state legislature, I wanna give our local authorities as much as they need to, especially the border towns, to whatever they need, whatever resources they need to strengthen our borders. You know,
A lot of the border towns don't want it. You'd
Want
be
the
surprised. They're
resources?
not conservative.
Really,
Yeah, they don't really want any intervention with illegals.
Blue counties,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
blue.
blue counties,
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, too
Well,
much
cheap
business.
labor.
Yeah, that's their economic base.
That too.
yeah.
Surprise.
So, what is your understanding of why the Tea Party movement has come about, and what is your understanding of what, the Tea Party's core principles would be?
Taxed enough already, right? You know, conservative voice.
What does conservative mean? Conservative, everybody's conservative now, I mean, and they're not, you know, the definition of conservative has changed, so if you're gonna use that word, you kinda have to define it nowadays, it's like love, everything, you know. Everything. It's just a word that gets abused.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you about myself. I'm conservative. What that means to me is family values. I don't believe that people have family values anymore. You have babies raising babies now. And, you know, my wife and I have twin daughters, and we're proud parents, and we're gonna raise our children. And some people these days have children, and their grandparents are raising them. And, you know, it's nobody's fault, but parents need to be parents. And, you know, I think, you know, just society in general needs to get back in the churches and get back in the civic organizations to mold and shape their values.
So then, back to what's your understanding of what the Tea Party's core principles are?
You know, conservative principles, whatever that may be. You know, I haven't gone and done a bunch of research on what the definition is, but it's a conservative movement.
Okay, thanks.
We got 40 seconds. Let that go, Pat.
Okay, let you run.
I was just gonna say, would you consider, there's 3 of us here that are precinct chairman in the Republican Party. Would you consider the Montgomery County Republican Party conservative?
Gosh, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay. Because you're running for Republican, as a
Yeah.
Republican,
Yeah.
and a predominantly, well, in this county, and predominantly Republican county, but not necessarily conservative.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, you know, I'm a proud member of the Republican Party, and I think it's conservative.
Okay.
Your education, you graduated with a BS from criminal justice.
Yes.
What were your future plans from that?
Yeah. Why am I in banking now, right? Yeah, criminal justice field had always interested me. You know, I grew up watching Walker, Texas Ranger. And it's just a great field and great thing to study. Sam Houston State University is one of the best universities that you can get a criminal justice major in. And it's top notch. You know, I'm proud to be an alumni there. And yeah, it was exciting being there, and the reason why I'm in banking today.
First answer the reason why were you in criminal?
It had always interested me.
What were you gonna do after you got your degree?
Well, I fell in love during that process, and my wife said it's too dangerous. So, yeah, so, you know, fell in love, and she said, that's too dangerous, and you need to be home. And so, whenever I started getting to my senior year, I got a phone call about, would you be interested in banking? And I went and interviewed it, and they hired me 1 week later to come work. I graduated August of 2007, and took 2 weeks off and went to work at Texas Community Bank as a credit analyst. And then from there, worked my way up to where I am today.
Well, banks get robbed. That's always that's right.
Or you can get lucky.
More and more.
And they have bad credit card debt.
I think there's a story there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
other questions we asked,
It's
thank
an
you.
inside
If you only knew.
Give me an overview of what you know about C-scope.
We got 15 seconds. That's all.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of C-scope. My wife was a teacher before we had children. She worked at Conroe ISD, Montgomery ISD. My mother was a teacher before she had children. One of my sisters was a teacher and a counselor as well. I've got 3 brother-in-laws that are teachers. They're important to me. C-scope is not good for our students, in my opinion. I want to see it go away.
How long has it been in Conroe Independent School District?
It's not in Conroe ISD, to my knowledge.
It's
You're
not
correct.
good because,
It's just bad.
because, what's bad about
The
it?
research I've done on it, it's not, in my opinion, it's not teaching our children what they need to be taught. I think there's some bias parts in there that I don't agree with.
You got any examples that you?
And not off the top of my head, I
Okay.
don't, but
Okay.
I just know whenever I started researching it, it just was not good.
Okay. We got about 5 minutes. What's your path to victory? It's a pretty loaded field.
Yeah.
You got some pretty big heavyweights there that you're going against. What's your path to victory as far as money? And we'll redact that off the camera because you probably, off the recording, because you're probably gonna get into some specifics on your campaign.
Why don't we save that part, Indy, since they're at the end, I can turn it off because it's hard to go and edit it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay,
Oh,
okay.
It's a,
All right, well, that's what I was doing. We got 5 minutes, so.
I have a
why don't you-
quick one.
Okay.
You got a quick one?
Yeah,
Yes, I
quick.
do, yes, I do.
The quick one is 3 minutes.
Well,
Okay.
you're an NRA member, so my question regards, in the state of Texas, of course, we have concealed handgun carry. Now, the U.S. Constitution really establishes it as an individual right, yet we don't require people to have a license for free speech or to exercise religion. So my question is, would you support legislation for open carry? If not, why not? If so, would there be any restrictions on open carry?
Yeah, I'm a lifetime member of the NRA, and I'm also a CHL license holder as well, and most of my members in my family are as well. And if that legislation were to come up and were to pass, you'd probably see me, using that legislation.
Would you get behind that legislation or submit it?
I'm sorry?
Would you get behind the legislation or submit it for open carry?
I don't know. I think there's other bigger important issues on our state legislature that need to be addressed before open carry, such as truth in taxation, education. I believe that teachers need to be teaching the children instead of teaching the children to pass the test. I believe that those are higher priorities than talking about open carry.
Okay.
Dale? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm still back on question number one and your answers there. We all agree that water is a priority. Prop 6 on November 5th passed. Can you tell me, in your opinion, what are the good points and the bad points of Prop 6? Especially with the financial background, from the financial aspect of it. I mean, but in broad and general, but narrow down on the financial as well.
Yeah. Proposition 6, in this state, there's lots of areas that are treated like third world countries. People don't have water, and they needed water. And I was in favor of Proposition 6. I know some people were not, but those people needed the water that they're gonna now be able to get, from what we're told, and such as infrastructure needs, low interest loans. Now they have a pathway to get what they need. And I believe that nobody in the state of Texas should have to go without water. That's something America does not need and shouldn't happen here.
Okay. Well, still got some time on the
You
clock.
got a minute and 7.
Okay. A couple hundred years ago, if you needed water, for instance, you probably wouldn't build your house in the middle of the Sahara Desert or the Mojave Desert or anything like that. You would go where the water is rather than forcing people to bring the water where you are. So I understand nobody should have to go without water, but sometimes that's a choice, and then there's multiple ways of getting water. If you want to go out in the middle of nowhere and dig a well, go for it. So, but from a financial standpoint, what about the prospects for commercial lending to finance those water projects?
As opposed to
As
what
opposed
passed.
to
Borrowing from the state.
having the state act as your financial institution.
Yeah, no, I understand. The difference is these are low interest loans. If you go to the bank, it's not gonna be low interest loans. And these entities, it's all tax dollars. Why not pay the smaller interest rate? So, I'm sorry, I was in favor of Prop 6.
Okay, so back to your, we got a couple minutes. You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Path to victory.
Do we want to turn off the camera?
Yeah.
You gonna do it right?
The secrets.
Brian is the button man.